Hi, I'm Andy Mioch and you're watching A News. Here are the headlines. South Korean president's surprise martial law declaration sparks chaos in Seoul. Defense chief offers resignation. French government faces no confidence vote that would spell the end of Michel Barnier's short-lived administration. The United Nations sounds the alarm on Syria's escalating humanitarian crisis. South Korea's MPs launched impeachment proceedings against President Yoon Suk-yeol after the head of state's surprise martial law declaration that sparked chaos in Seoul.
Thousands of people protested in South Korea's capital after the unexpected martial law declaration by the country's president. It triggered the biggest political crisis in decades in Asia's fourth largest economy. Just a few hours after the declaration, Yoon Suk-yeol reversed his decision. It's after the parliament unanimously voted to lift the decree.
그렇지만 거듭되는 탄핵과 입법농단, 예산농단으로 국가의 기능을 마비시키는 무도한 행위는 즉각 중지해 줄 것을.
Now South Korea's ruling People Power Party calls for Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun's dismissal and the resignation of the entire cabinet. The opposition Democratic Party is calling the move a breach of constitutional order. They argue that the martial law declaration was an abuse of power and are calling for stronger actions to hold the president accountable.
Even if martial law is lifted, he cannot avoid treason charges. It was clearly revealed to the entire nation that President Yoon can no longer run the country normally.
By Wednesday morning, protests continued outside the National Assembly, led by South Korea's largest labor union group, the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions. They say they'll continue demonstrating until the president resigns. Many residents are anxious after the last 24 hours of political turmoil. Some express fear for the future of the country, while others are still trying to comprehend the impact of such an unprecedented move.
It was an experience that I've only seen in movies, and I realized how much more serious it is than I had imagined. The current economic condition is difficult, and the fact that the president is causing such anxiety among residents makes the situation so much worse. I'm deeply disturbed by this kind of situation, and I'm very concerned about the future of this country.
Last night I happened to wake up from my sleep and came across the news. At first I was scared and very confused. I kept thinking, what's going on? Is this something that could actually happen in this era? I couldn't sleep until the martial law was lifted because I was so frightened.
South Korea's financial markets have been volatile, with the won hitting a 2-year low and stocks falling. While the government has promised to take measures to stabilize the economy, the political uncertainty continues to affect public confidence.
As the motion to impeach South Korea's president is expected to be presented in the parliament tomorrow, the defense minister tendered his resignation over the martial law. Minister Kim Yong-hyun has apologized to the public for spreading confusion and causing distress, the ministry said in a statement. Kim says he will take full responsibility for the martial law. He will remain in his role until the president accepts his resignation. The president has not yet commented. Over in France, the National Assembly is set to debate 2 no-confidence motions certain to oust the fragile coalition of Prime Minister Michel Barnier. The motions follow Barnier bypassing Parliament to pass the Social Security budget.
A no-confidence vote in the French Assembly could spell the end of a short-lived administration of Prime Minister Michel Barnier. It's over Barnier's actions on Monday which saw the Premier force through the Social Security budget without a vote. Barnier's budget seeks to rein in France's spiralling public deficit through €60 billion in tax hikes and spending cuts. But it's been opposed by politicians from both the left and far right. The far-right national rally of Marine Le Pen is expected to vote for the motion put forward by the left, giving it enough numbers to pass. The Prime Minister says ousting him from power might worsen the political situation in the country.
The situation is difficult in terms of the budget, in terms of finance. I'm also very vigilant when it comes to financial markets, which I know quite well. It's very difficult in economic and social terms, as I've just said. One thing I'm sure of, Mr. Chassaigne, and keep what I say today in mind, is that the vote of no confidence, when we see each other again, will make everything more difficult and more serious.
If Barnier's government falls, 63% of polls say they would be in favour of French President Emmanuel Macron resigning. However, Macron rejects calls to resign and calls such a scenario political fiction. Some French people believe the recent snap election was a bad decision by Macron.
Yes, it was a loss from the start, so I thought this would happen sooner. So yes, I was expecting it, and it would be a real catastrophe for the country.
Barnier will be the first French government to be forced out by a no-confidence vote in more than 60 years, at a time when the country is struggling to tame a budget deficit.
And while the no-confidence vote looms, our correspondent Ross Cullen brings the details from Paris.
Well, this afternoon, Wednesday, here in France, MPs will be voting in a decisive no-confidence motion against the Prime Minister, Michel Barnier. And if lawmakers do cast their ballots according to party political position and according to previously outlined voting intentions, then the Prime Minister will be brought down and the French government will collapse for the first time since 1962. On Tuesday evening local time, the Prime Minister went on prime-time television networks here in France, urging lawmakers not to vote against him and calling on them to show responsibility. The President, Emmanuel Macron, has also responded, condemning the no-confidence motion, and he's also answered critics who are calling for himself to resign, saying that to do so would be a political fiction. We will have the results of that no-confidence motion here in France a little bit later on Wednesday evening. Ross Cullen for A News in Paris.
That was Ross Cullen bringing the latest from Paris. In other news, recent reports by Mediapart and other sources raise questions about the funding and independence of the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. The OCCRP is known for its high-profile investigations, including the Panama Papers.
According to Mediapart, OCCRP operates with an annual budget of 20 million euros, employing 200 people. Over the past decades, it received 52% of its funding, totaling $47 million from the US government. Additionally, $15.2 million came from the EU and other European governments, while $24.9 million was provided by individuals and private foundations. Mediapart also reports that OCCRP received $2.2 million from the US State Department between 2015 and 2019 for a project titled Balancing the Russian Media Space. Another $1.7 million was allocated from 2019 to 2023 for strengthening investigative journalism in Eurasia, focusing on regions such as Russia, China, and Central Asia. The US Department of State provided $2.3 million for a project in Malta and Cyprus to expose corruption and enhance investigative journalism, as detailed in federal funding records. This program was renewed in September 2023 with an additional $1.3 million. These regions are widely known for attracting Russian oligarchs, according to the report. OCCRP participated in the Cyprus confidential investigation coordinated by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. The investigation focused on alleged financial misconduct and sanctions breach in Cyprus. On 14 November 2023, Cyprus announced official investigations into claims of sanctions violations, with the findings published in collaboration with OCCRP. 3 weeks later, teams from the FBI and FENSIN arrived in Cyprus to assist, according to official statements. Mediapart's investigation includes statements from OCCRP founder Drew Sullivan, who acknowledged that OCCRP avoids reporting on US-related issues due to restrictions tied to funding from the US government and the Open Society Foundations. USAID reportedly refers to OCCRP as a partner organization and has oversight over projects and editorial leadership as outlined in public records. According to the same reports, several journalists who contributed to uncovering these connections have alleged threats from the OCCRP's leadership. These claims have been reported by Mediapart and other investigative outlets. The questions raised by these findings underscore the complex relationship between investigative organizations and their funding sources. As these revelations continue to unfold, OCCRP's role in global journalism remains a point of intense debate.
The UN has sounded the alarm on Syria's escalating humanitarian crisis as hospitals are struggling to function and civilians are bearing the brunt of violent clashes in the northwest of the country.
The United Nations warns that recent attacks in northwest Syria are worsening an already dire situation. It's after rebels ousted Syrian government forces in Aleppo on Friday. The spokesperson for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Jeremy Lawrence, says the impact on civilians is devastating.
We are in the process of verifying deadly attacks impacting civilians. For example, on the 29th of November, 4 civilian men were killed, reportedly as a result of multiple ground-based strikes by HTS, hitting an area hosting the Aleppo University student dormitories in the Hamdaniya neighbourhood in the western part of the city of Aleppo. According to information gathered by our office, all victims were students of the university, and following that, many other students fled the university complex.
The healthcare system is nearing collapse as aid organisations halt activities. Christina Bethk from the World Health Organization in Syria says the strain on hospitals is immense.
Insecurity and restrictions on movement have forced around 65 non-governmental organizations that were previously operational in Aleppo and Idlib to suspend their activities. And in many cases, this is leaving health facilities overwhelmed or out of service. That includes one of Idlib's largest hospitals, Bab al-Halwa, and Al-Ghazi Hospital in Aleppo, both of which are reduced to serving emergency cases only and leaving countless patients in limbo.
With no end in sight to the violence, the UN is urging immediate action from the international community to address the escalating crisis.
Over in South Africa, the country officially launched its G20 presidency, becoming the first African country to lead the forum. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa said the G20 presidency will focus on mobilizing financing for nations stricken by climate-induced disasters and extending debt relief to developing countries. He announced that the annual G20 summit will be held in Johannesburg in November 2025.
We must take action to ensure debt sustainability for your low-income countries. A key obstacle to inclusive growth is in developing economies, including in our own African countries, is an unsustainable level of debt which continues to limit their ability to invest in infrastructure, in healthcare, in education, and other development needs.
The U.S. has pledged more than $1 billion in humanitarian aid for people displaced by drought and food insecurity in Africa. U.S. President Joe Biden made the pledge during his visit to Angola, aiming to bolster infrastructure and regional partnerships on the continent.
It's the first time a sitting U.S. president has visited Angola, and Joe Biden has pledged a lasting support on Africa's own terms. Speaking at Angola's National Slavery Museum, he says America will provide funds for humanitarian aid.
The United States continues to be the world's largest provider of humanitarian aid and development assistance. And that's going to increase. You know, that's the right thing for the wealthiest nation in the world to do. And today, I'm announcing over $1 billion in new humanitarian support for Africans displaced from homes by historic droughts and food insecurity.
Biden praised President João Lourenço's leadership in conflict mediation and Angola's stance against Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
The partnership between Angola and the United States also extends to supporting peace and security in this region and beyond. President Lourenço, I want to thank him for his leadership in mediation and regional conflicts. I also want to thank him for Angola's speaking out against Russia's unprovoked war against Ukraine. It matters. It matters when leaders speak out.
Biden also visited the Lobito Corridor, a U.S.-backed initiative to connect Angola to neighboring countries with a transcontinental railway. The project aims to facilitate the export of critical minerals and boost trade.
It's called the Lobito Corridor. We're building railroad lines from Angola to the port of Lobito in Zambia and the DRC, and ultimately all the way to the Atlantic, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean. It'll be the first transcontinental railroad in Africa and the biggest American rail investment outside of America. I really mean it.
Biden's visit to Angola marks an historic step in strengthening U.S.-Africa relations, looking at helping to build economic growth and humanitarian support.
For more on the U.S. President's visit to sub-Saharan Africa, we go to our correspondent, Chris Okamringa in Kinshasa.
U.S. President Joe Biden is in the Angolan capital of Luanda to fulfill a promise he made 2 years ago to increase American trade and investments in Africa. The major highlight of his trip is a visit to the Lobito Corridor, a 1,300-kilometer railway that will be funded by the U.S. and European countries. The railway line will transport critical minerals like copper and cobalt from the Democratic Republic of Congo and Zambia to Europe and the U.S. once it's completed. The minerals are essential for making batteries for electric vehicles, a sector that has been dominated by China for years. Analysts consider the railway project as America's move to counter China's growing influence in Africa. In 2013, China surpassed the U.S. to become Africa's largest trading partner. The Biden administration has already committed $4 billion towards the project. The first phase of rehabilitating the track between Angola and the DRC border is already complete. Officials are now working on the second phase of the project. President Biden said the future of the world is in Africa while meeting his Angolan counterpart, João Lourenço. The funding of the railway project comes a month before President Biden leaves office for Donald Trump, who won the election with a promise to put America first. Officials say the project will connect Africa's Indian Ocean coast and the Atlantic port once it's completed by the end of the decade. U.S. President Joe Biden's visit to Angola is the first time a sitting president has visited sub-Saharan Africa since 2015. Chris Ochamringa for A News in Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
That was our correspondent, Chris Okamringa, bringing the details on Joe Biden's Africa visit. Over in Belgium, Turkish diplomacy chief Hakan Fidan and his German counterpart Annalena Baerbock spoke about the Syria, Gaza and Ukraine conflicts on the margins of the NATO foreign ministers meeting in Brussels. Germany's foreign ministry said in a social media post that Turkey is strategically important in addressing regional crises, calling the country a key player in the region. The NATO meeting in Brussels is expected to continue with talks on security challenges, collective defense, and regional stability. Russia views Ukraine's potential full membership in NATO as unacceptable because it would pose a security threat, Kremlin stated today. Moscow says that the idea of Ukraine joining NATO is in absolute contrast to Russia's position. Kremlin spokesperson claims that prospect of NATO membership does not address the root cause of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Earlier, the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry said that they will not accept any alternatives or substitutes for Kiev's full NATO membership, calling it the only real security guarantee for the country. The Middle East, once often overlooked in climate discussions, now has the opportunity to have its voice heard. The region has long struggled with desertification, and hosting the UN's COP16 conference offers a platform to assert its leadership in finding solutions. Our Narchichak Jahangirli brings the latest from COP16 in Riyadh.
An atmosphere reminiscent of tents set up in the desert is complemented by the trees and the bushes inside the venue, which attributes a hope, something that we expect from the land negotiations.
The ambience at the COP16 venue in Riyadh speaks volumes about the significance of this event. People are welcomed by vibrant decorative tents and prayer rooms that reflect Saudi Arabia's unique blend of tradition and modernity.
So having it happening here, it creates more awareness to the community in Saudi Arabia, but also to the world globally. People can understand, even in areas with prone or threat to desertification, there's still efforts can happen. I've gone around Saudi Arabia and I've seen a lot of efforts that are happening to combat desertification.
Has to have a policy, one policy, and it has to be something that we can work with, something that will be successful. And there are lots of challenges, of course they are here, but I think that it is important to work together.
Saudi Arabia's role as a host is more than symbolic. Many cultural elements not only provide functional spaces but also emphasize the kingdom's commitment to integrating sustainability with its rich heritage. However, it also gives a very strong message. Collaboration is the key.
So I think it's wonderful that they're voicing their support for the mission of UNCCD by hosting COP16 this year. But I think land degradation is a global issue that, you know, not just one country or one region is facing.
COP16 in Riyadh is not just a regional event, it's a global call to action. The unique atmosphere of COP16 serves as a reminder that the solutions to these challenges must be collaborative, innovative, and inclusive of those who have lived with them firsthand.
That was our Nachichak Jahangirli's report from COP16 in Riyadh. Elsewhere, in tech news, researchers at Turkey's Middle East Technical University unveiled a solution to one of the most persistent challenges smartphone users face: charging. The team developed a device that could extend smartphone charging cycles to as long as 1 year. The technology mimics the functionality of the human brain to process information with remarkable energy efficiency. The research, 4 years in the making, is currently undergoing a patent application process. The race for humanoid robots heats up as companies like Tesla and 1X push forward with AI-powered machines. One of the latest contenders, 1X's Neo, promises to assist with everything from cleaning to companionship.
This is Neo, a new humanoid robot designed to help you with your household chores. It comes from a company called 1X, which has bases in both Norway and Silicon Valley. Neo is powered by advanced artificial intelligence. CEO Bernd Bornig explains how Neo's AI capabilities allow it to manage simple household tasks while providing more than just a mechanical service.
So this is the newest version of our humanoid Neo, who is going to be piloted in homes. We're starting to roll that out now. And this is going to be, in the long term, this will be doing your laundry, cleaning your house, tidying, and generally giving you back a lot of time in life.
Bornig also highlighted Neo's ability to serve not just as a helper, but as an interactive companion, capable of engaging in meaningful conversations and providing entertainment. The model also has a feature that allows users to remotely control the robot from anywhere in the world.
And also, we're really excited about the ability to teleoperate the robot yourself. So if you're somewhere else, you can actually teleport into your robot and do small things in your house that maybe you forgot to do, right? Like feed the cat or close the window, check that everything's okay, and also be able to have your friends visit in a different embodied version of remote presence, which I think is going to be really exciting to explore in the coming years.
While the robot is still in development, 1X plans to release the market-ready version of Neo in 2025.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for tuning in and keep watching A News.